Crime is in the news day after day. Crimes committed, crimes solved, crimes unsolved. What happens to the people who commit the crimes? Are they punished? Is the rest of society being protected from them? Correspondent Bill Plant explores some of these questions in a series of reports on crime and punishment. Here's his first report.
From the beginning, we, the people, have wished to guarantee ourselves a society that would establish justice,
you may or you may not hear all the charges pending against you tonight,
ensure domestic tranquility, and at the same time, promote the general welfare. What we have is a society in which 5 million crimes of violence disrupt the domestic tranquility each year, in which justice is flouted as 90% of all crimes go unpunished, and the general welfare is marred by a paralyzing fear of crime. Crime and the punishment of criminals are among the most emotionally debated problems of our society, and there is a general impression that nothing we have tried to do about the problem so far has had much effect.
Regardless of age, all of us are equally prone to be victims of violent crime, whether it be the sexual molestation of a young child or the murder of an elderly citizen. Nothing is more important than the right to walk the streets in safety.
In this series, we will look at the problem of crime and at how we punish those who break our laws. It's clear that people have become increasingly angry because many believe that our system of justice protects them less than it protects the lawbreaker.
When is prison supposed to be for rehabilitation only? It's to protect us out here from the criminals.
Every day, nearly 30,000 people become victims of crime.
You're in for armed robbery.
Yes, sir.
Tell me how much you made in the year before they caught you.
I made about $80,000.
Did you work very hard for it?
No, about 3 or 4 hours a night. Did a couple jobs a night, about 3 times a week.
They call this the line. These prisoners, people arrested in the last few hours by city or county police in Dallas, are first taken into court to be arraigned. It will take just 30 minutes for all 38 of them to be read their rights and the charges against them, have bail set, and be assigned a trial court.
Where's David Allen Raines? You've got a murder case that's a felony offense out of Judge Naylor's court. You have not been indicted on that charge. Bond is $50,000.
We see everybody from 17-year-olds through perhaps 80 or 90-year-olds. Some of them are first-time offenders, first time being arrested, first time before a court, first time in the criminal justice system at all.
But there is general agreement that for every criminal who is captured, there are 9 others who got away. And further, that only 1 crime in 100 results in a jail sentence, which means that for those willing to take the risk, it can be argued that crime does pay.
I think, unfortunately, today the odds are definitely in the criminal's favor. He knows that, and I think that's one of the problems that we have in our society, that the inmate knows that the chances of conviction are very slim, and if convicted, the chances of punishment by incarceration are even slimmer than that.
We have a man shot, 122 on 8th Avenue.
For those who would commit crimes, the only effective deterrent is the certainty of capture and punishment, and that simply does not exist.
Well, eventually, we blunder into most criminals. Well, there are not many police. There's about 1 police officer for every 500 people. But when they are caught, then frequently there's nothing really deterring.
On the other hand, you have our court system. It's kind of a joke. Delays. Here it takes, after we try a person, the case is on appeal sometimes as long as 7 years. You may lose them all, but you still can be out on the ground, robbing and stealing.
Can I turn and face sideways?
Can crime pay?
Well, let's put it this way. I paroled in August of '76. I stayed on 3 months, probably did 200 burglaries. I came back to only give me a year.
I got arrested on 3 robberies, got convicted on 1, got a fight to life, and I pulled at least 70 robberies. And in my case, it pays because I've got a home to pay for and everything. I can go out there, I'll have everything made when I get out there.
B.J. Johnson and Bobby Bell were typical of a lot of people that we met in state prisons. They didn't seem to regret what they did, only that they were caught. And despite the fact that they're doing time, each feels that he has beaten the system. Fear of punishment is supposed to keep people from committing crimes. The rest of us are supposed to be able to feel safer when criminals are put in prison. But in practice, our system of punishment often fails both society and the criminal. The first place most offenders look out from the wrong side of the bars, however briefly, is in jail. Jails and what happens in them are the subject of our next report. Bill Plant, CBS News, New York.
Prisons and their effects on criminals is the subject tonight of Bill Plant's third report on crime and punishment.
Prison, the penultimate punishment for criminal behavior. There were 283,000 people in state and federal prisons last year, a record number at a record cost, about $2.5 billion. Prisons keep criminals away from the rest of us, temporarily. Almost all prisoners eventually return to society, and the question is, will they have changed for the better or the worse when they do get out? Will the rest of us be able to feel any safer?
When you come down here, what you don't know, you learn. In other words, if you come down here as a drunk, you go out as a thief. It's just automatically because that's all you got to talk about.
Most state prisons, where 80% of the total number are held, are at or over capacity. Despite federal court orders in a number of states to improve conditions, life on the inside is often as much a fight for survival as on the outside.
You will not be harmed. Clasp your hands on top of your head.
And sometimes the unrest boils over, as it did at Attica in New York and McAllister in Oklahoma, and forces the rest of us to notice that something is wrong. But more often, hostilities nurtured behind the walls become part of the emotional baggage the ex-convict carries back into the real world. John Maher, himself an ex-convict, now runs Delancey Street, a successful West Coast program to help ex-convicts cope with society.
Somebody must understand that if you have me walking around the room frightened for my life for 5 years, full of hatred and rage and frustration, that when I get out, it's gonna come out on somebody.
It's just like that. If I come down here with 5 years and I lay over in a cell for 5 years, I get bitter. Then I'm gonna get even.
That is why for years we have tried to change people while they are in prison, to rehabilitate them. And these institutions are the first place in the system where a real effort is made. The price of this help is high because by the time a lawbreaker gets to prison, he's generally a two-time loser. Nonetheless, we make the effort.
And if you have a suggestion, raise your hand.
They don't just make license plates these days. There are educational programs from the grammar school level through college, and there is vocational training of all kinds. But in fact, rehabilitation programs become a means to a different end. Prisoners take part in them simply to make their records look good so that they'll get out earlier or have more privileges on the inside.
Each institution that I was in had a system that if you behaved yourself, then you were entitled to more benefits within the institution. So everybody knew, well, if we go along with their programs, we can get to the top. So that made us con-wise.
First of all, I don't think we know how to rehabilitate anyone. All we can do is provide opportunities for those who have the motivation and the desire to change, but we don't know how to coerce or force change on an individual who's unwilling or unmotivated to take advantage of the opportunities.
Does it make any difference whether the discipline in prison is loose or strict? In Texas, all prisoners are required to work a full day in the fields or the shops with close supervision. The object is twofold: to make the prison system self-supporting and to instill work habits in the inmates.
The group of people that come to prisons obviously have not acquired that degree of self-discipline that allows them to live within our laws. We don't ask any inmate to do what some citizen is not doing in the free world to support him while he's here.
The Texas prison system, with its work ethic and strict supervision, is relatively free of the chaos and inmate brutality which pervades most other state systems. But the depressing fact is that the rate of recidivism in Texas, that is, the number of those who commit crimes again, is the same as it is everywhere else. In this respect, it doesn't seem to matter much what the quality of life is like on the inside.
Experts who defend rehabilitation say the reason it hasn't worked is because it's never been done right. But there is growing support for the idea that criminals should be sent to prison simply to punish them. Already, the courts are sending more people to prison each year, and there will soon not be enough prisons to hold everyone society wants put away. Alternatives to prison do exist. They are less expensive in terms of money and wasted lives, but they carry a higher risk for society. More about these programs in our next report. Bill Plant, CBS News, New York.
In his final report on crime and punishment, Bill Plant tonight takes a look at the kind of offender law enforcement officials most want to reach, the juvenile.
Two squad cars responded to the early morning radio call. Burglary in progress. The intruder was familiar to them, a 13-year-old boy from the neighborhood.
Come on out of there. Come on. Now, we fooled with you long enough. Now, come on down.
We'll put the dog up here and let the dog on him a while.
The boy's name is Charles, and he is no stranger. He's been caught in more than a half-dozen burglaries. Yet, because he's a juvenile, his record is confidential, to be destroyed and presumably forgotten when he reaches 18, no matter how much longer it gets. In some places, no records are kept at all.
Your ass belongs to me, boy. I'm gonna fix you. And you can't say too much now, because I get you now. I bet you that. You big enough to break in here, you big enough to take some consequences.
Because Charles is under 18, what he has done isn't called burglary. Instead, it's classified as an act of juvenile delinquency.
No, what? You talking about earlier this evening.
Because juveniles are routinely supposed to be given another chance, they get off a lot more easily than someone a few years older, whether the crime is burglary or murder. This is supposed to give youngsters a chance to straighten out, but the juvenile crime problem keeps growing, and some observers believe the system is entirely too lenient. Charles, for instance, has never spent any time in jail, just a couple of nights in a detention center. But if he had been convicted as an adult with everything he's been charged with, the same offenses would have cost him years, possibly life, behind bars. Crime is a problem of the young. Fully 50% of all crimes are committed by people under 18, and they're often crimes of violence. In Chicago last year, juveniles committed a third of the murders. In San Francisco, more than half of all felony crimes. More than 1.5 million juveniles were arrested in 1975. In California, there are 11 youth detention centers, 3 of them maximum security institutions, to which the courts send young people who have committed crimes as serious as murder, rape, and armed robbery. The treatment at these institutions includes solitary confinement. They have usually come from problem homes and been arrested many times before they are sent away.
I needed somebody to stay with me, and if I was doing something wrong, to come behind me and pick me up. I have my mom, and she can't do it herself.
What about your father?
Well, he ain't there, but if he was there and kicked me around a little bit, I don't think I would have done it.
How many times have you been arrested?
26. I learned now that it ain't a game because they don't want to play with you no more.
Across the nation, more than 75,000 juveniles are in custody in 2,500 public and private institutions. And authorities say that if they had more room, they'd have the young people to fill it. A number of states now are considering legislation which would stiffen the penalties for juvenile offenders. Police complain that lighter penalties for juveniles are one reason adult criminals often use juveniles as decoys, particularly in drug dealing.
It doesn't take massive draconian punishment at the early stages of the process, but we become so soft and wishy-washy at the early stages of the process that we tend to encourage crime.
I'll be about 75 years old when I get out of here. Is that what you're looking forward to?
This is an experiment in what might be called shock therapy at Rahway Prison in New Jersey. Young people who have had problems with the law are taken to this maximum security prison for an encounter with inmates who once started down that same road and are now doing time for things like robbery and murder. This program was developed by the inmates themselves, who said that little was done to help them when they were younger.
Get off that train, man. Get off that juvenile train. Don't think that all that little stuff that y'all doing now, you're gonna get away with it forever.
1,000 youngsters from the Newark area have been through this, and so far, only a handful have had new problems with the law.
The juvenile justice system today does not do an adequate job. All these kids seem to know about the criminal justice system is that they're talked to. They're talked to by judges, by probation officers, by correctional counselors. What they really need, it seems to me, is certainty of being caught and certainty of being punished.
The treatment of juvenile offenders is an even greater dilemma than that of adults. Young people can be put away for a while, but they will inevitably learn more about crime on the inside. And when they return to their homes, whatever problems exist, family discord, drugs, alcohol, peer pressure, will still be there.
If you take a kid from the South Bronx on 135th Street and you send him to school, educate him a little bit, qualify him, give him some therapy, he becomes a perceptive, intelligent human, normal human being, then you send him back to 135th Street. He will be the only sane man on that block, and that will drive him crazy.
Almost nothing we have done to punish criminals has had much effect in reducing crime. Jails are warehouses with few resources to help people when they first get into trouble. Prison rehabilitation programs are judged to be generally ineffective. Parole, probation, and work release often fail for lack of supervision. We cannot decide whether we are too strict or too lenient with juvenile offenders.
You want to come get him tonight?
Yeah, I'll come and get him.
Most Americans do not want to live in a police state, but they are demanding freedom from the fear of crime, and they want criminals to be punished. One answer is simply to build more prisons and fill them up, to remove criminals from society no matter what the cost. Another is a complete overhaul of our criminal justice system, with a lot more attention to the conditions in society which cause crime. But that is an enormous commitment, and one which we have up to now been unwilling to make. Bill Plant, CBS News, New York.